ancient people couldn't see blue. This really is an astonishing fact, or it would be if it were true, but it isn't true. It's utterly false. So why is it literally everywhere? Not only are there numerous YouTube videos that perpetuate this myth, with millions of collective views, it's in all sorts of science blogs and articles, Science Alert, Business Insider, Daily Mail, ASAP Science, and many, many more. On this video, we'll thoroughly debunk this notion that ancient humans couldn't see blue through a complete examination of the material culture of ancient civilizations. We'll discuss classical languages and the way they expressed color, including blue. We'll explain why classical Greek writers like Homer utilized color in their descriptions in what may appear to be a peculiar way, by connecting ancient Greek with modern languages, but also Old Norse, Classical Latin, all the way back to Proto-Indo-European, and the birth of color within human linguistic systems. Finally, we'll be exploring the very core of color perception and its illusions, using the mathematical relationship that define the color spaces physiologically perceived in human vision, to explain the usage of color terminology in ancient cultures, and why they differ from ours. Most of these videos and articles have three main structural problems which we shall address in extreme detail today. 1. They use a specific test on the Himba, a population in Namibia, Africa, as one of the bases of their argument, without knowing that the results of said test were famously tampered with and grossly exaggerated by the BBC. I'll read to you the actual statements from the experts involved on section 11. 2. They mention the ancient Greek writer Homer's description of a wine-dark sea. In other words, the fact that Homer doesn't describe the sea as being blue, but rather wine-dark colored, and they use this, among other things, as proof for the Greeks not having a word to describe blue and perhaps not being able to even see it. 3. They use the supposed rarity of the color blue in nature, together with the fact that oftentimes the blue we see in animals is not a pigment, but rather a sensory illusion, known as structural coloration, as a way to reinforce the statement that it's not really blue, so there isn't really that much blue around us, hence ancient civilizations didn't have a word for it, and as a result, they couldn't even see it. As we will see, the first 2 points are easily debunkable. The third point is absolutely irrelevant. I only need one specific bird to completely destroy the entire section about animals not being actually blue. The raven, because of its description in Old Norse, on section 13.
Ancient cultures didn't see blue.
Why is the sky blue? It's one of the most common questions asked by both kids and adults, unless you're from ancient Greece.
To people of the ancient world, like the Greeks, blue wasn't a color at all.
What lies at the base of all this is the fundamental question: does language influence perception? Do we see reality through the patterns laid down by our mental linguistic structures? The question is relevant in the framework of the topic under consideration, but as you will see shortly, some of the statements made in these videos and blogs are plain wrong, such as the following one.
William Gladstone, a 4-time Prime Minister of Great Britain, Gladstone wondered if Homer was colorblind.
Gladstone, he believed the Greeks of at least Homer's age were in fact colorblind.
William Gladstone never said that. I'll show you what he actually did say on section 6. I mean, for a color the ancients didn't even have, they surely liked putting it everywhere, didn't they? There is polychrome in ancient wall painting, architecture, clothing, figural painting, pottery utensils, and ornaments in ancient Greece, and that includes blue. I mean, did you look at the Minoans? Blue is in the artwork, on their buildings, on the makeup of their women, not to mention the fact that it also had funerary connections in their culture. Now, how a color they couldn't even see had very well established funerary connections is beyond me. On these videos, they do mention that the ancient Egyptians did have a word for blue and did create the so-called Egyptian blue. However, they used that as the exception. The ancient Egyptians had it, no one else did. But they failed to mention that Egyptian blue was very popular, guess where? In the entire Mediterranean world, because of maritime trade. Egyptian blue had been used in Greece for a very long time, as indicated by the Knossos pigments we shall discuss in the next section. Furthermore, production of Egyptian blue spread to Mesopotamia, Persia, Greece, and Rome. The Romans built factories to produce the blue pigment they knew as caeruleum, we have the description of the manufacture of a blue pigment, which is clearly Egyptian blue frit, given by Vitruvius at the beginning of the 1st century BC in the Books of Architecture. In addition, there is also the description of the Roman navy in Britannia made by Vegetius, and he tells us that the Romans dyed the tunics of the soldiers in the navy and painted their boats and ships the same color as the ocean, blue, so that they would be less visible. In other words, blue was a sort of early tactical camouflage for the Romans. Of course, the relationship to color of a person changed depending on the level of development of the material culture. Cavemen didn't have the means to express blue artistically, but that didn't mean that they couldn't see it. And now get ready for the kicker. Not only Egyptian blue was available in Greece, but it wasn't the only blue the Greeks had access to. Hey, don't hold it against me if the next section blew your mind. Several cities flourished in Greece during the Bronze Age, in particular the centers of Knossos, Mycenae, Pylos, Thera, and numerous wall paintings and murals have been uncovered. Samples of blue pigment from excavated wall paintings have been analyzed by non-destructive methods, namely X-ray fluorescence, X-ray diffraction, and mineralogical microscopic examination. It took me 10 takes to say them right, and the results show 2 types of blue pigment used. Egyptian blue, which confirms the fact that it was imported through trade, and glaucophane, a sodium, magnesium or iron aluminium hydroxide silicate which occurs as a natural mineral in Crete, and Thera. The usage of this glaucophane pigment as a prominent constituent in Minoan art is unquestioned. Now check this out. Question. Thera. Did you notice I put emphasis on it during my explanation? Thera is an ancient Greek city where? Santorini.
You'd think the country that is now ubiquitously known for beautiful blue rooftops would have a longer history with the color.
No mate, wrong pick. That is precisely the place where they made blue in the Bronze Age in Greece. I gotta say, academic research sometimes does have a sick sense of humor. And besides, in Mycenae, not only they used Egyptian blue, but they modified it, creating variations in blue through grinding the base material with varying amounts of quartz. Once again, for a color they couldn't even see, they surely seem to demonstrate appreciation for different varieties of it. It almost seems to suggest that they saw blue like we do. From the prehistoric times to our time, color information was interpreted first by our brains through our eyes, and second by our linguistic systems through our cultures. The gradual transition from the prehistorical general consciousness to the scientific knowledge of the nature of color phenomena is complex, but one thing is for sure. The relationship of mankind to the color world is not just utilitarian. We don't just represent linguistically each color as we actually see it all the time. Color, in language, is not just about description, but also categorization. After reading ancient writers' description of the sea being dark wine-colored, stormy but never blue, honey being described as green, sure you might think the ancients were weird. Why wouldn't you just describe something with its actual color? We do it too. Let me prove it to you.
Honey is described as green. I don't know about Homer, but if I saw green honey, I would not eat it.
And we describe this wine as white. This is white wine. This is yellow, mate. Now imagine if I opened a bottle of white wine and instead of looking like this, it looked like this. I would not drink it. I mean, people call these white grapes. This is green. I can go on. Different languages categorize color differently. Even though most humans perceive the same differences between colors, in linguistics, the exchange of descriptive colors for different basic ones is called type modification, and it's extremely common in most languages. When you use a type modification system, you use a more basic color term in order to classify things, rather than describing them. We do it too, on a daily basis, and saying green honey is weird but white grapes is not, is a double standard. Nothing weird under the sun. And talking about the sun in Old Norse and other Old Germanic and Slavic languages is considered red, rother, and so is gold. And no, gold did not have a high copper content, if that's what you're wondering. Only low quality gold was considered yellow, again, a phenomenon of categorization. Furthermore, not all languages have the exact same boundaries within the color spectrum when it comes to nomenclature. Let me prove it to you. Look at these two colors, one is red and one is pink. Would you all agree that these are two different colors? Of course you say. And yet, pink is nothing more than a light red. In fact, the word pink, which originally was the name of a flower, wasn't used in English to distinguish this specific pale tint of red until the 17th century. Now look at these three colors. To English speakers, these are all blue. To an Italian, this is blue. But these have their own names. This is azzurro and this is celeste. In Italian, in fact, if you wanted to convey the idea of the blue sky, you should say cielo azzurro rather than cielo blu. To a Russian, these two lines of the metro station are two distinct colors with their own names. To an English speaker, they're both blue, just like these two flags are both blue. And if we add green to our example, the situation becomes even weirder. Objectively, the distance between navy blue and powder blue is greater than that between blue and green in any chromaticity diagram. And yet in English, green is a different color, but navy blue and powder blue are both blue? Does that mean that you Anglophone speakers cannot see these different colors because you don't categorize them differently from blue? No.